For an early look at what we can expect from the local market today, we're joined by Evan Lucas from IG in Melbourne. Evan, thanks so much for your time. SPI futures are pointing in the right direction right now, but not really taking into account that Chinese data we saw yesterday. What should we take out of this?
Yeah, look, it was a bit of a tale of two sort of stories yesterday with regards to what happened out of China. Some people are taking it as a positive, some people aren't. If you have a look at the PMI figures that actually came out yesterday, they were actually okay. They're at about 50.9. That's probably about the highest we've seen in quite a while. They're at 50.1 in February, but most analysts were expecting it to expand a little bit harder than that, up around about 51.6. It really did put a dampening on sort of obviously what we saw in Asian trade yesterday, particularly on the Shanghai Composite. We also saw the Nikkei off quite strongly yesterday as well with regards to the fact that the yen continues to strengthen despite the fact that Kuroda is talking about doing the stimulus sometime today. So it was a little bit of disappointing. It's more mixed data. We've obviously seen retail sales for January, February being the weakest they've been since 2004. We've also seen the fact that obviously GDP figures picked up in the last quarter of 2012, snapping a 7-quarter losing streak. So it is very, very hard to sort of see that. The other thing that I sort of took out of what I saw yesterday, obviously the property market is what everybody's talking about with regards to China. Yesterday we saw 20 of their largest cities start to bring in some fairly major changes to obviously their policy, particularly in Beijing and Shanghai. They're doing slightly different things depending on which city you're in, but Shanghai has basically decided to cut back on sort of prohibiting banks for lending out money for third home buyers, whereas Beijing has gone even harder. They're actually suggesting that for single parent homes or single person homes, you're only allowed to have one residence. So it's again cracking down on that property bubble. It's trying to rein in obviously those increases in property that we've seen. It is a little bit of a short-term look rather than a sort of a medium to longer-term view from the Chinese, and it will probably put more pressure on what we've seen in our markets over the next sort of couple of days particularly. So it's a bit disappointing out of the Chinese data, and also last night we saw in the US that their PMI index was also slightly disappointing. It is at a 2-year high, but people were expecting it to sort of expand a little bit higher. We obviously saw February being an absolute standout month, and the fact that they fell back last month was always going to drag their markets lower, and that's probably what we did see. The good side that we did take out of that, their housing and also their auto relating, so things like truck manufacturing, also aeroplanes and cars, are actually outpacing other areas. It does show that consumer spending is still on the way up over in the largest economy in the world. It does suggest that they are still doing relatively well, but the reason it pulled back is because sequester came into motion in March. We also saw the fact that there is now starting to be some squabbling in the Fed with regards to obviously their $85 billion a month expansion. Interesting thing that happened last Friday night for us, our time, we saw FOMAC member Charles Evans come out and suggest that if we see non-farm payrolls coming in at an average of 200,000 jobs created each month for the last 6 months, that he may actually change his rhetoric as well to maybe slightly pulling back. Friday sees that data. Analysts are expecting it to be in around about 205,000. So that will actually trigger that sort of idea that he said on Friday, which again may sort of be a little bit shaky for markets going forward.
Okay, let's take a look at the day ahead now. Evan, I know we have the Reserve Bank meeting today, also the Bank of Japan. Are they the two things you're going to be focused on?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, today probably the RBA is going to be the one that's the most quietest. There's all 28 analysts that were taken by Bloomberg all suggest that there's going to be absolutely no change. The one thing they are also saying is that they do expect that obviously the scope to cut rates is what they've been saying in their reports for the last 3 or 4 months will remain. So basically they've got their finger over the button, but they're not going to do anything today. So it should see the Aussie dollar particularly holding around that $1.04.6 to 2 dips 0.8. It won't move very, very hard, but it will be Japan that everybody's eyes are on today. It's obviously Kuroda's first as the head of the Bank of Japan. He is obviously expected to bring that stimulus forward and maybe even start open-ended asset purchasing to sort of hit that 2% inflation target they keep talking about. It'll be very interesting to see if he does. We've obviously heard a lot of talk and bluster since Abe's come into government. It will be the first time they actually realistically properly act on something. So it will be a very interesting call, and I'm obviously watching the Nikkei today at 11 will be very interesting, and then probably at about 1:30, 2 o'clock obviously Eastern Australian time will be when we expect Kuroda to come out, and his comments will definitely drive Asian markets particularly today.
Okay, great. Evan, thanks so much. Let's just, finish with some opening calls. As I said, SPI futures pointing in the right direction, up over 20 points at this stage. What are you looking at?
Look, we expect the market to be actually dead flat. We're probably going to actually go back slightly, probably about 4 points.
Okay, fantastic. Evan, thanks so much. Appreciate your call.